This episode is going to be helpful for anyone that's doing mid-level flips. If you're looking to find properties that are cheap and ugly, but add value to them and make a profit, Stephanie is going to help you walk through that process.
Right. I love the fact that she said beginners like to do cheap deals because it's a smaller loan that you may have to take out to do the fix and flip, which is less risk. Gives you that confidence to go on and do more of those deals. And are you in Augusta, Georgia, by the way?
Yeah, I live in Aiken, South Carolina, which is right next to Augusta, but Augusta is one of my markets, Augusta and Aiken for the most part.
Gotcha. Paul, we've had Paul on the podcast many times. He's been providing a lot of guidance on how to coordinate with agents. Could you tell us about your business in 30 seconds?
Sure. So I am primarily a fix and flipper. So I've been flipping properties for 10 years, which makes me feel really old when I say that out loud. But so yeah, fix and flip for the most part. I've got my husband working with me in our business locally as well. I'm a licensed realtor, though I don't do a lot of transactions anymore. And I, over the last couple of years, have started a coaching business as well. So I coach and mentor new and seasoned investors as well.
Amazing. 10 years ago, what actually struck a chord with you that you decided you wanted to flip a house?
So I was pretty lucky and I kind of fell into real estate. Like a lot of people, I think, seek real estate out, but it found me. So I guess I'm fortunate in that regard. But what drew me to it was obviously the opportunity. Like I didn't come from money. I didn't come from opportunity. I grew up listening to my dad talk about how real estate was the vehicle. And because I fell into it and saw the opportunity, I sort of latched on. But I studied accounting, went back to school for accounting and started working with a real estate investor and got in that way. And I like the challenge and there's always something different with real estate. So yeah, you have to be a bit of a glutton for punishment too to get into it. So
what do you mean by that? Do you have any like scars you could tell us about?
I have a lot of scars I could tell you about. Yeah, we could talk a lot. I've got a few scars. I think it's just, there's a big learning curve when you get started in real estate. And there's so much that you just don't know. And so I think if you're willing to like take those lessons and just keep moving forward, I think that's how you're going to be successful. I mean, you guys have, been in the industry and seen it, and you're always met with some kind of adversity that you have to overcome. And it could be super minor, right? Like a home inspection, like you were talking about, or it could be something really big. And so if you're willing to sort of suffer, learn, take those lessons and continue forward, then you'll be successful. But I mean, I've had contractors like not show up at the end of a job and then had liens on properties. I've had contractors take your money. I've had things that were missed on inspections. I mean, I've got like every story. I think I've learned everything just through mistakes, period. So
how do you prevent those mistakes going forward? Do you have a process for like, hey, let's make sure that doesn't happen again?
Yeah. I mean, it can be super simple, like just putting something in like a pre-inspection before I'm purchasing a flip. To some major systems and processes or types of properties maybe that you wouldn't buy. Like for me, like something big, like I tried to do luxury type properties before and they just don't really work well with me. Like I'm not into the details. I don't care so much about the design. Like I always end up buying like this big project with this big spread and it never really works out for me, but I'll do like the ugly little cheap ones all day long. And it's like my bread and butter. So I learned from doing a couple of those big projects that maybe this wasn't for me. And so that would maybe be a big shift. And then small things like, hey, this is a step in our process that we need to put in, into a checklist and just make sure that somebody's following like a simple checklist. So I think it could be really big or really small.
When you're talking about the ugly cheap, let's dive into that because I'm curious what you mean when you say ugly cheap ones.
Sure. So we like to, now my market works for it based on price point, right? So I like to buy properties under 100K, even less if possible. There's not quite as much inventory as there was, but if I could buy something for 40, 60, 80K, and then just do a basic remodel and then sell it at like the median home value or less that's what works for me. The
Is that gonna be
renovation.
something that's dependent on your market too? I know for me, that's exactly what like that we prefer, and even the people that are in our network that do the flips, we're all in that same boat. Like, stay on the cheap and do the median because that's what our community needs. But is that effective everywhere, or is it something that needs to be specific to your market?
I mean, if you're talking about the median home value, then that's going to be specific to your market, right? Like, so your price point, like what your market's going to allow is going to drive at what price you're purchasing it at. So
Mhm.
if your median home value is 500K, then you're still in a bigger buyer pool of, the majority of buyers are going to be buying at the median or under. And so if it's more of an expensive market, then that's what it is. I'm lucky because my current market is at a lower price point. Sounds like your market is too. New investors that I work with typically, like, especially if they're getting started, they don't want to get into their first flip at a 350 price point,
Mhm.
if they can help it. So they'll go to those cheaper markets. So I think you just have to understand what your market's going to demand. And then it's all percentages based on that, I think.
What about your determination of what exactly to put into a cheaper property to get it to that median without overspending? Because if you go over, if you spend too much on it, then obviously your profit is less. So, what are the considerations that you go through when you're determining exactly what to do, what to change, what to fix, how much to put in?
Yeah. So it's all going to come to your comparables, right? So if you want to sell the property, if you've done your comps, you go back and look at what those properties sold for and what rehab or what's needed to do to force that appreciation on that property. So that's one thing you look at. But then you have standard stuff like we almost always replace all of the floors. You almost always repaint it. You're going to update the cabinets, whether it's replacing or not, updating countertops. And then I almost always end up doing roofs, HVAC, maybe water heater, that's not that big, but some of those big components that are really important to that type of buyer. Like if you're talking about like a first home buyer, maybe even a first time investor, they're going to want to make sure that those big components are taken care of. So I like to do those because
Mm.
it's $5,000 for me to redo a roof, but the marketability of that property, um, the value that I get back, the return on investment is pretty big. So I like doing those big components for sure. And then it's just updating the property, going back like for like, and understanding that I'm not living there. So
Yeah, that's always hard because it's like you want to put your touches, your light fixtures, and then the reality is like, okay, well, I'm going to put a $400 light fixture here that's probably not going to be valued the same way.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And so it's like saving money on some of those things, like as simple as a light fixture. And also asking yourself, like, will this house sell? Like, is this light fixture actually going to sell this house? And if
Right.
the answer is no, then you can probably make a different decision. So,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, when you're building, especially for a newer investor, if it's like your first flip, your first project, I think you could write your scope of work with everything that you would like to do, like all of the nice to dos, like if this would be the best house ever. And then ultimately you add up your budget, realize that that probably isn't going to work, and then start to deduct things that are, a nice to do, or be, a bit savvy on some of those purchases to decrease the budget.
And it is addicting to see the transformation. People
Hmm.
obviously love transformations. There's TV shows. That's why people like those. And it's really cool to be the one who transformed it.
Yeah, and the impact that you have on a neighborhood is pretty huge too. Like when you start, like you've been doing it for some time, and especially if you've been concentrated in one area, if you're starting to, especially if you're starting the trend on the path of progress, right, and renovating some properties in the area of turnover, when you start to see that, and then the patterns that follow behind, whether it's you continuing to improve properties in that area, or other flippers or other people or other homeowners, like that's pretty big when you're talking about like a local community, as well as the impact that you have on the people that are working on your property, the people that are buying it. Like the wholesale. We talked about a flip we did recently, and we talked about how much that it was like wholesale twice before it got to me. And so we were talking about the spread
Wow.
the first guy got, the spread the second guy got, the spread we got, like how much our contractors made. And so when you start to think about the impact in that way, I mean, it's pretty cool. Like you touch a lot of people when you flip that one property.
Yes. Especially with how much like the contractors are always looking for good work, and you get to be a part of providing that for them.
Yeah. 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 We've got a couple good guys. We've got one older gentleman and his wife who are working for us. And we try to like almost keep a deal for him, right? Because we want to keep him working. He doesn't go and work on other projects. So we try to keep him busy if we can.
That's cool. How long has he been with you? I mean, that's one of the hardest things is to find a contractor that you like and that works well with you and stays a long time without overbooking themselves, et cetera.
Yeah. Probably pushing like 2 years. I think he's been
Oh yeah,
on our
that's great.
jobs.
That's
Yeah.
great. Now, how do you and your husband divide up your work?
So, I started the whole process with real estate. My husband was a tennis pro, and so that's what he did. When we got married, we decided we were going to build our rental portfolio. So I was already flipping properties. I used the Burr method, right, to scale up our portfolio. And so I pushed most of that. I was in real estate full time, of course. And so when we got to a point where our portfolio was big enough, we felt like we could generate enough income, for him to comfortably leave his job. He did that. And so that was after we had our daughter. She's 3 now. And so my husband, for the most part, he manages a couple of local projects, the local flips, and it keeps him busy. He works a few hours a day. He drops her off at daycare. He picks her up, manages our local projects. And that's what he does, and helps with our rental portfolio as well. He manages that for the most part. I've been working on building my coaching business, and so I've been focused on that and then scaling up some flips. So, he kind of runs the projects now that he's doing locally, and, asks my expertise based on all of the mistakes that I've made and scars that I have. And we move forward from there.
Can you tell us about your coaching business?
Yeah. So I have a coaching company. It's called Flip an Empire. So I founded that about 2 years ago. And we work with newer investors for the most part, people who are just looking to get started into fix and flip, and a handful of seasoned investors who are looking to scale in the flip space as well. So whether you're flipping into, your portfolio using the Burr strategy or traditional fix and flip. So,
I love the Burr strategy. Is there a website?
I have flipandempire.com as our website. I'm pretty active on Instagram as well.
Oh, cool.
And I have 3 communities on School. If you're familiar with the School platform, are you?
Yeah. How do you decide which community is which? How have you divided it out?
Sure. So we have Flip and Launch, which is our free community. So you can enter in there, get to know us a little bit, and then decide where you want to go. And so we have Foundations, which we've just opened, which is just really like flipping 101. It's building that foundation. It's really to get you from 0 to 1, right? Your first flip, because I think that's the biggest leap between skills and mindset. Mindset, I think, being the biggest. And then I have Flip and Grow, which is really for people who are looking to kind of take it to the next level and start scaling and build a business out of it.
Got it. I just see Flip and Empire on Instagram now. And I had a G. There's no G. It's flipping, not flipping.
Flipping. Yeah, not flipping. Yeah, it's flipping because it's really for a different F word. But so yeah.
I love it. So your daughter's in school and she's going to the zoo on afternoons. That's really sweet that you decided to spend some time with her recently. And of course, illustrates like the freedom you have when you are your own boss, right? And you've got that passive income from the rentals, and you've got lots of flips under your belt. How do you decide if you're going to flip it or if you want to keep it as a rental property? I assume that in your market, a lot could be rentals. It seems like the lower price markets, they end up being really great for the Burr strategy. They can cash flow.
Yep.
Yeah. We just decide based on cash flow for the most part. So if the price to rent ratio makes sense, we will Burr it. We scaled up our portfolio, and then we slowed down a little bit to kind of optimize what we had, right? Making sure we're getting the numbers we want. We have the tenants we want. But typically if a property will burr, I will keep it first because they're harder to come by. And if not, then I'll flip it.
What do you, this is exactly what I want to hear here. What is a successful burr for you to say, okay, I'm keeping that one? Like, are you looking to actually pull a certain percentage of capital out? Or is it just, if I can get what I put in it back, you're going to keep it? What does that look like?
Yeah, we just want to pull out what we've got in it for the most part. We want to break even. And we don't, like, I've had some where I could have pulled extra money out, but we weren't trying to do that. And then if we'll cash flow like $300-400 is kind of a base hit, we're happy with that. So when we first started, we were getting like a 4% 10-year loan. So we wanted to pay off our portfolio as quickly as possible. So some of those didn't cash flow so well, but the principal pay down and all of that is pretty huge. So we've left those. And when the interest rates went up, we just started on a longer term, like 20-year.
Gotcha. Now, a 20-year amortized, or are they actual 20-year terms?
They're amortized. I think they're a 10-year balloon.
10-year, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is your daughter interested in house flipping and burr strategies?
She likes money. So
teaching your
she
daughter
gets excited about money. Yeah. So she likes going by the park by Home Depot. She likes going to Home Depot. And my husband will bring her around a little bit. So I think she's getting to the age where she starts to understand stuff. So, going around to different houses and stuff. So I'm guessing she'll grow up with that.
How old is she?
She's only 3.
Oh, I mean, she likes money. She's pretty smart for a 3-year-old.
Yeah, she gets excited about money. She can take a quarter to the gumball machine. So
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
What would you, kind of as we wrap up here, what advice would you have for somebody that's been wanting to do this, but hasn't quite pulled the trigger yet? They've got analysis paralysis.
I think analysis paralysis just comes from too much information. So I think you just have to figure out what you want, right? Have some clarity on some goals, find somebody who's done it and just do what they did and like tune everything else out and just like do one thing, get proof of concept. You hear a lot of people who are like, oh, I want to build this massive portfolio, or, I want to quit my job and I want to have financial freedom through real estate. And you've never done a deal before. Like, just do a deal, get proof of concept, see if you actually like it, see what worked, but didn't, get that data and then move forward from there. But you just gotta do it and then assess. Yeah.
Well, check out Flippin' Empire as well. And I'm curious, what's the rest of your day look like today?
The rest of my day today, I have some coaching calls. I'm closing on a property this afternoon. So buying a flip today. Getting some projects started today. Some other ones I closed last week. So that's
awesome.
That's what I'm doing today.
Well, congratulations on the closing today. And I'm excited to see what the end result is.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. It was a pleasure having you on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.